everybody. Welcome to the latest Bold Leaders in Learning. I'm Brandon Busteed, your host, Chief Partnership Officer and Global Head of Learn Work Innovation at Kaplan. I'm excited to announce that we are officially a year into Bold Leaders in Learning. So this is a great milestone, obviously. But on this special occasion, I'm delighted to have an incredible entrepreneur and leader in Ahva Sadeghi, who is the founder and CEO of Symba. We're going to talk a little bit about the work that they're doing at Symba. Ahva, thanks for joining me today. Would love to just have you tell us a little bit more about your own personal background and about what Symba is doing right now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, for having me on. Thank you to your entire team at Kaplan. So excited to be here. As you mentioned, my name is Ahva Sadeghi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Symba. And Symba is one of the leading remote talent development platforms. We support internship programs, apprenticeship programs, and more. Our story kind of begins with my own. I was a college student in Tucson, Arizona, interested in international relations and affairs. And as you might imagine, all the internships I wanted were not in Tucson, Arizona. They were in really big cities, and I felt really limited by my geography. So fortunately, I landed a remote internship at State Department and became very passionate about remote work and the future of work almost a decade ago. So excited to be here and share more about Symba.
Yeah, and you know, you've already had some great success and accolades. Last year, named Forbes 30 under 30. You know, have received a lot of funding for Symba, right? Making some great traction. And one of the things you shared with me that I was, you know, I guess I hate to say not surprised to hear, but I was shocked by how bad it was that you told me that only 2% of all venture funding goes to female-led businesses, and it's less than 1% that go to female minority-led businesses. I mean, tell me that's not true. I know it is, but that's just an incredibly depressing statistic to hear.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that that's where the current state is. But I think that there is definitely an awareness and hopefully, you know, a lot of change happening. I definitely experienced it. You know, when my co-founder and I were going out for our first raise, it was a lot more challenging. I felt like we had to be very professional, and we had to definitely have all of our numbers very well organized because, you know, we had a very intense experience, but we've powered through and just stayed focused on the impact and the work that we're doing. Building a startup is never easy. It doesn't matter your gender, where you're from, but definitely there are certain obstacles, but we've been very persistent, right? From the get-go, we knew exactly what we wanted to do, and we kept going through different iterations of Symba, understanding how we can build value. So I think that you have to understand as a founder, there's always going to be obstacles in the way, but you just have to be persistent and keep your head up and keep moving forward.
So all female founders, all female executive team, and I think you also told me your original programming and development coding team was 100% female as well, which is just incredible to hear. So thank you for that leadership. Thank you for obviously providing a great example, and I certainly hope it leads to opening up more doors in the same fashion. So.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your support. I think you've also been very much involved in the design phase with us during development and some of the exciting parts of it as well.
Yeah, so I'm excited about what you're doing. And, you know, let's go back to, you know, what you shared as your own personal journey on this, you know, decade back where, you know, you were looking at internship opportunities, and one of the limiting factors was where you physically are. And I think in the middle of the pandemic, and as we're, you know, hopefully, you know, as I knock on wood, emerging from the pandemic in certain ways, there's been so much discussion about remote work, remote internships, virtual internships, and obviously one of the things that people have reflected on, you were doing this well in advance of a pandemic intervention, but was the idea that, especially for college students, right, you think about where there are some of the most exciting internship opportunities in cities like Washington, D.C., or in San Francisco, or New York City, right? These are some of the most expensive places in the world to live. You know, you're lucky if you get a paid internship, let alone, right, you know, an unpaid internship, but then it's the living expenses of actually having to be there if that isn't already home for you. So, you know, these were things that were hurdles to internships before. but I think we're now much more aware of them. And I think as we emerge from the pandemic, right, that there's still going to be a high demand for virtual internships simply because of some of these reasons. So tell me a little bit more about some of the other benefits that you're seeing from remote internship, remote work. Would just love to hear. And I know there's downsides too, so maybe we'll talk about both, but I'd love to have you start with some of the benefits that you see that you think are going to be lasting even as we emerge from the pandemic.
Absolutely. I'm always excited to talk about this because when we got started with Symba back in 2017, we were told that remote internships would never happen. And so we even began doing a lot more research on the in-person experience as well. But remote internships have a lot of benefits. But number one thing I tell talent leaders and organizations as they're building out these programs is keep in mind that a remote internship is just fundamentally different than an in-person internship. So when you try to put the two side by side and compare and contrast, they're just completely different. So remote internship is great for an organization that's thinking about how do we make the shift to hybrid flexible teams? How do we ensure our managers are ready to manage remote teams and build culture in a remote way? How do we bring on talent that is not in our backyard and we open up our workforce to more opportunities? So I think that there's a lot of benefits even on the employer side for designing remote operations, as well as for the student, right? Do I want to work remotely? Is this something that I thrive and do I enjoy this? Or no, actually, I'm definitely an in-person type of person. And, so it's figuring out what you like. And that's what internships are supposed to be, right? It's a taste of what your future could be. So you can hopefully iterate while you're in college and say, maybe this is not the industry for me. So you can keep on trying and figure out what's best for you. I think it's great that all internships are now paid. So organizations are making sure there's an effort to pay all of their candidates. So I encourage students to have both in-person and remote opportunities to learn from them. And I think organizations now are realizing with remote internships, they can bring on more students and they can bring on students not just in the summertime, right? You can have interns working for you for maybe 10, 20 hours a week. So the whole model of what an intern really is being flipped on its head. Organizations are pivoting and being open to innovating new ways that work for them.
Yeah, I mean, are we at the point where, we should be thinking about calling it something different, right? Internship still has such a, kind of traditional connotation to it, much like co-op does. And I mean, there are terms that are well understood, but in other ways, right, as we think about virtual internships and the fact that these are now things that aren't just happening in the summer, or, they could be extended year round or multi-year. Why shouldn't a student work for an organization potentially over 2 or 3 years while they're in college, right? As opposed to 6 weeks or over a winter break or whatever it is, right? Like all these things are starting to change. But I mean, do you think we're at a point where there's some better terminology for what these experiences are?
It's actually so funny that you bring this up because our team, when we were starting off with marketing and branding and positioning, we're like, what if we think of a different word? Because really, this is not an internship. But the thing about it is that internship has this level of credibility to it. And you put an internship on your resume. So as we started designing and thinking of different words, we're like, but does that give that level of validation to the candidate that's going out to seek a position in their field? So we kind of steered clear of doing that, even though hopefully when we are able to do more of the work that we're doing at Symba and expand, we can develop and design our own category and work with organizations to do that. But for now, we realize that internships are this important part of your resume for now.
Yeah. One of the things that goes back to research I led when I was at Gallup was, well, first of all, that an internship, any kind of an internship, was a huge boost to your long-term well-being, just in terms of overall life evaluation and your workplace engagement, regardless of the kind of work that you ended up doing, right? So you could say, any kind of internship where students are able to apply what they're learning in the classroom to a work situation doubles the odds of being engaged in work later, right? So this is a game changer. But if you dug deeper into the data, it also showed that the length of the internship you had made a difference as well. So somebody who had a shorter internship, it was less efficacious than somebody who had a longer internship. And so one of the things you've pointed out here that I'm encouraged by from the perspective of remote, virtual internships is, you could start, let's just say, with an internship that's in person in the summer. that might have ended in the old, model of what we've done, but now you can continue while you go, quote unquote, back to school, where you can be virtual during the academic year, right? These are not mutually exclusive either. You could see students coming in and out of both, in-person, on-site type internship opportunities that then are extended into virtual. But I'm really encouraged because I think what ultimately can happen is that a higher percentage of students who do have internships theoretically can have longer, more meaningful internships as a result. Do you feel that that's starting to happen right now?
I definitely do. And we see it at Symba because we work closely with organizations to design their programming. And we have a feature that becomes alumni status, or you can keep your interns on for longer. And we're seeing more and more organizations ask to say that we'd like to keep this intern on, and
Mm,
we keep them on for maybe 10 hours a week, or a less, and they actually get academic school credit. So it's like, in a way, they're taking a
right,
course credit, but it's a keep warm strategy because organizations invest anywhere from 50 to 100K per intern. And
mm,
so you don't want to lose them, right? You spent that time investing in them, and they are obviously seeing other opportunities that are out there. So if you don't retain them, they could obviously go to other organizations, and you want to keep that talent very close to you. For my own internship, this is the one at State Department, it actually does run the academic school year. So it
interesting.
started off
Yeah,
in September and ended in May. And for me, it was fantastic. I got school credit for it, and it was something I could balance with my workload. And I do encourage that internships don't need to always be 40 hours a week, right? It could be project based,
yeah.
really whatever works for the student and for the organization.
Yeah, definitely. And I've had Jeffrey Moss from Parker Dewey on the show in the past. Obviously, they're focused on kind of the micro internship concept and shorter project based types of work opportunities, and all of those are a step in the right direction. You go back and you think about college graduates and the belief that they're work ready. And the data is not real good on that right now. I mean, about 13% of the general population in the US strongly agrees that college graduates are well prepared for success in the workplace. Not a real strong vote of confidence at all. And when you get under the sentiment of why they don't feel like they're prepared, it's pretty simple stuff, right? It's they haven't had any prior work experience that's relevant. They haven't been engaged in it. Like, they go into an interview and they can't even talk about a meaningful project or a deliverable that they were responsible for. They can talk about some of their grades and a little bit of depth in some of their classes, but not necessarily something that looks like a work-based project or a portfolio, right? So this stuff is really, really important. What I've been impressed by the way that you're thinking about it and the tools that Symba is building around it is that you're thinking very much about the factors that make for a great internship. And this is always a topic I've been fascinated by, right? Like just a high level question, what makes for a great internship? Anybody who's had one, right, or had multiple knows that there's a big difference. Did you have a good manager who spent any time with you, right? Did you have any opportunity for reflection and feedback on your work? Was there any connectivity between the internship and your academic studies where a professor tried to draw out in a project, right, something that connected the dots between the two? There's a lot of facets to that. Maybe just tell me a little bit about some of the things that you have found that are important and the ways in which you're supporting the companies that are running these internships and the students who are part of them in terms of maximizing not just the experience, but the best practice of what a great internship looks like.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go back to kind of the first, the message that you were talking about as far as students not having enough opportunities or, understanding, being ready for the workforce. And then I'll dive into the
Yeah.
internship aspect. And the reason is because when we started building out Symba, all of our mentors had told us, do your homework, go do customer interviews, understand the pain point before you build a product. And so my co-founder, Nikita, and I did over 200 customer interviews asking about the internship journey, asking the very questions, what makes a good program? And when we started Symba, we thought it would be a marketplace. We thought remote internships were going to find great candidates and match them up with really cool companies. And what we discovered that was sourcing was not the challenge. Companies just did not have the bandwidth to continue recycling and creating all of these internship programs. So that's why there were not enough internship programs or opportunities for students. And so we realized we need to help build capacity. we need to help build bandwidth from the company's perspective. And so from that research, we found out that there are quite a few factors. The first thing is that you need to make sure that you have a team in place to run the program. Oftentimes, organizations will slap on this internship program to other functions of an HR team, but you need dedicated team members that are passionate about running a program. You need to have buy-in from managers who are excited about mentoring and managing and really giving it their all, and during a dedicated time frame.
Right.
And during the experience, you need to make sure you're collecting feedback, that you're ensuring that projects are very well designed, and also fit the interest of the candidate and the student. So those are some of the key things. And I think at the very end of the internship, you have to make sure you're taking time to understand and analyze the success of the program. So on Symba's platform, we've dedicated a lot of resources into building dashboards. So now organizations have insights, like what does their internship program look like year over year, which we saw was not happening. It was usually managed on spreadsheets, and there was very little lack of knowledge sharing and tracking of this information over time.
Yeah, so lots of thoughtful points in there, and I mean, obviously beneficial to the companies that you're working with, certainly beneficial to the student. And I think for universities that are taking a really proactive role in supporting and running internship programs or co-op programs for students, insightful to them as well, right? Because you kind of have this, triangle of the university, the student, and the employer in terms of all of them. I mean, a student could get a great internship at an organization that's well run and have no connection with their university. But when the university also ties in academic programming, right? Or one of the programs I was involved in as a student, it was a spring semester preparatory course for a summer opportunity in leadership, followed by a fall reflection course, right? Where you actually had to produce some sort of either a paper or documentary or whatever about what that was. It wasn't exactly an internship experience, but pretty close, right? The summer opportunity in leadership was usually with a nonprofit organization or things like that. But it's just an example of where the university helped connect and curate that summer experience, which otherwise could have been good standalone, but it was certainly enhanced by thinking about preparing for it and reflecting on it. So I think there's still a lot of work to do in our ecosystem between the universities, the students, and the employers on that front. And I'm curious, like, as you think about, trends and forecasts, I mean, I don't think you'd be in the business that you're in if you didn't, believe in the growth of this as an opportunity. But are we going to get to a place where companies are able to just flat out offer more internships? Are we going to be able to scale this more? I mean, or is just they're going to run the same number of internships and we're just going to maximize those experiences? I'm curious what you're seeing.
That's our whole growth metric. That's what we study at Symba that makes us successful. That's when people say, what's a win for you? For us, it's a win when a company comes back and says, not only are we renewing, but we would like to add, X number of seats. And so we've seen some of our clients grow by up to 600%.
Wow.
Over 82% of our clients are scaling their programs. And it's kind of funny, this summer in particular, we've had some of our invoices, they keep going back. Actually, we need 5 more seats. Actually, we need another 15 more seats or another 20 more seats. And we're like, obviously, as a startup, we're so excited. We're like, as many seats as you need, you have.
That's right.
But for us, that means that, they're able to scale their operations because it was so challenging, right? It was the person running these programs, it was usually they were there for 2 to 3 years. And then the person coming in would have to reinvent the entire wheel from scratch. There was, they were using on average 11 different platforms and tracking things on spreadsheets. And if, organizations are spending millions of dollars to run these talent programs, and this is their entire pipeline for early talent recruiting, there needs to be infrastructure. It needs to be scalable. We need leadership to get excited about investing in these resources because cultivating talent early on is the number way to retain and build your company's future leaders. That is the easiest, most affordable, most successful way. And if you can do that with your interns, imagine what you can do for the culture of your entire company. So that's why internships are, I think, the most exciting aspect of the entire HR space, because it's this space of someone's joining a new organization, has not really worked before, is excited, but also needs to be nurtured in this environment. So that's why I'm very, very excited about this space and think that there's a lot of potential growth.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that have hit me over the past couple of years that, I still ponder, right? One was a panel I was on with a CHRO of a Fortune 100 company. And, she was talking about her internship program that they run. Obviously, as a large company, they had a fairly sophisticated internship program. It had it established for a long time. And so as she was talking about it, I was curious and I said, what % of your interns do you end up hiring? And she said, well, I know that exactly because we just looked at that data. And she said, it's 90%. And I was like, I didn't know what I was expecting to hear, but I didn't expect to hear that high a percentage, right? And so a couple things. One, she said they screen their internships with the same rigor that they hire full-time employees. So they, but what the big takeaway was that if you want a job at this company, you better first have an internship at this company, because the percentage of people they're hiring who didn't intern for them is tiny compared to the percentage they're hiring who did. So, early talent development is a broad topic that you're thinking a lot about, right? So internships and co-ops kind of fall in that category. But a lot of what you're talking about applies for brand new hires too, right? People who are coming into full-time jobs, maybe have never really worked in that particular environment, or maybe never had a full-time job before if they're a fresh college graduate. How much of what you're learning about internships is applicable to the year one hire, or somebody who's just kind of started into the workforce?
A great question. That's something that our own clients are coming to ask us, if we can expand using Symba beyond just internships for our new grad, our rotational program. And that's actually how we started expanding, because our own clients were asking us and seeing use cases for our product beyond the internship space. And I definitely think that they go hand in hand. And I think that it's fantastic to see the level of attention that organizations pay into their internship program as far as designing these programs. And I think if they did the same thing with the new grads, they would have even longer retention. Like if you had a mentor for your new grad hire, if you had even social events woven in, probably not at the same level or like caliber of your internship program, but even some of that within the programming, I think that would be great success for everyone who's participating.
Yeah. And I know one of the other, topics that you're, passionate about and thinking very, very carefully about is where diversity, equity, and inclusion fits into this, right? We know that, pretty much every company the conversations I've had with CEOs and CHROs, there isn't one who hasn't expressed their desire to increase their diversity talent pipeline. They all know they're not doing a great job. No one is satisfied on that. The issues that we have, suffered through this year in this country in particular have exacerbated it, put more attention on it. In a positive way, more leaders focused on this. But one of the data points I was sharing with you before we went on live was this data from currently enrolled college students, recent data from currently enrolled college students that shows that non-white students are twice as likely to be interested in virtual internships and or to take a virtual job upon graduation compared to white students. There's also some interesting data from the Slack Future Forum among current workers where, for example, white workers are 7 times more likely to want to return to the workplace than African-American workers. These are different data points, but there's an interesting theme that's kind of coming up in here. What's your view on the pros and cons of virtual work versus in-person work relative to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And what do you take from that data of non-white students being twice as likely to want a virtual internship or a virtual job? I'm just curious what your take is.
I'm glad that you brought this up, and I know that the reason we connected is I had read some of your writing on some of these topics, and I know for certain there are a lot of environments and work cultures that are not very inclusive, that do not make people of color feel like they really do want to show up to the office. They're excited about maybe the business and the work that they're doing and want to have that name on their resume, but they don't feel like they can be a part of the social chit chat in the coffee room or the water cooler conversation. They don't feel very included, and that's because the company hasn't taken a very strong approach to making sure that they are diverse and in all aspects of the business. So I think that a sense of interest in working remote may make people feel, more included and involved, and more, focused on kind of the business aspects of the business. That said, I do know that a lot of organizations are making this top of mind. We've seen all the tech organizations pledging millions and millions of dollars on this issue. And for us at Symba, I mean, the core reason that we were created was all around this topic. I'm a human rights fellow with Congressman John Lewis, and Symba was an action project. And we realized, using remote internships, we can actually create more opportunities for students to intern from anywhere, from the comfort of their laptop. And so that means that we work with partners like Inroads, like Europe, that are focused on these topics. I think it would be very interesting for us to go back to those students and ask them directly, why are you more interested in a remote internship? But those are some of my hypotheses.
Yeah, no, very interesting stuff. And you pointed out earlier too that the nature of remote work, you're more likely to be judged on the actual work you're doing or the work product, and less about did you fit in the lunchroom and were you cool to hang out with, or did you get along with everybody else? So there's a lot of really important things that obviously we're on the very early phases of truly understanding. And I think you're right. More what I would call qualitative research, interviewing people, really trying to unpack some of these things is going to be, an important step. I'm curious, there's no doubt the pandemic has likely accelerated, your opportunities and the need that companies have for, what Symba's providing. What do how are you thinking about the potential pendulum swinging back? How much is it going to swing back? What's going to remain, what might change? I'm just curious what you're anticipating as things start to open back up a bit more.
Great question. And my background, I'm an economist, so I love thinking about the future and hypothesizing and understanding what could happen. And I think that, a lot of people have said they love working remotely, but I think that the future is hybrid, is flexible, and distributed teams. So for us, I think there's always going to be an opportunity for remote work and hybrid companies. And I think there's also a large investment in early talent development and D&I that we're still going to be able to support, but definitely it's hybrid, thinking, I want to be able to have that flexibility, like Friday mornings working from home, or, going into the office, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or, whatever that might be. And it's good for the environment, right? We all don't need to run to rush hour. There's a lot of other benefits too. As a small business, maybe it's expensive for me to own real estate in San Francisco or have an office there. So there's a lot of benefits there too for organizations. But I do think it's hybrid, it's flexible, and good organizations are going to listen to their employees to meet them where they're at. What do you like, and how do we make sure you're enjoying your work with us?
Yeah, no, I think, I would agree with that thesis. Hybridity is going to be, the theme, even for people who are eager to come back to the office. It's the same kind of data I'm seeing in higher ed, right? Vast majority of the students who were in person on campus, eager to return to the in-person on campus. However, the majority of them, 56%, say they still would like to have the option to take classes online, to have lectures video recorded so they can go back and listen to them again. Right. So, even those who are eager to rush back to the in-person experience are saying, yeah, but I still would like, they're asking for hybridity. And I honestly, I think companies are a little further ahead in their thinking and planning and policies around this than higher ed is. I'm very worried about higher ed, just assuming that, this is all going to kind of come back to what it was. And, there's going to be faculty and staff who want to remain remote or be remote half of the time. And how do you make policies that cater to all the different needs and different classes of employees, right, between faculty and people who have to be physically on campus versus those who can work remotely? It's going to be, needless to say, fascinating to see how all of this evolves. And I would love to just end with any major predictions you're making right now about the future of work. What would you leave us as your biggest prediction that a year from now we can come back and evaluate how close you were on that?
My biggest prediction, I think that we're going to see more people go to the office than they said they would. I think more people are excited to go back and be with colleagues and go into the city and commute than their reporting. I think that people want flexible part of it, because I think as human beings, we want it all, right? We don't want to be told one or the other, but I think that we're going to see much greater numbers of people wanting to return back to the office than is being reported right now.
All right. Well, that's good. I wouldn't want to be in commercial real estate. I'm just putting that out there, but your prediction probably is great news to our friends in commercial real estate. So, Ahva, thank you so much for joining us. Keep up the great work. Would love to obviously keep following what you're doing, and best wishes to you and your team for great success going forward.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Definitely. Look forward to connecting with everybody next week, same time, and look forward to it. Thank you so much.